Hexes are spells which focus on making enemy units worse, whether that's taking down their damage, defenses, a little bit of both, or a lot of something else. But which spells are the best? Today we're counting down the top 10 hex spells in Warhammer 3. Also stick around till the end of this video to find out how you can get 1 month of premium skill share for free. Coming in 10th place we have Missile Mirror. We're starting our list with one of the most unique spells in the game. Is that why it's making the list? A little bit. Is it also strong? I like to think so. All you need to do is drop a cast onto an enemy unit, and any ranged attack they launch will be fired straight back at them like a bent shotgun in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Now yes, the duration is fairly short, so at best you're going to get a couple of barrages, but if you use it on the right unit, that could be all that you need. And yes, you do need to pick your targets right to make sure it's going to get value. For example, some Skaven Slave Slingers, while they may break, that's pitiful damage. However, if you get this on some Iron Drakes, Blunderbusses, or Flamers, it's going to be like watching me talk to Isabella, because you're going to see some fireworks, and someone will probably be dead at the end. The Overcast doubling the duration makes it a little easier to use, but for 15 Winds of Magic you could honestly do the job yourself with a Blossom Wind or something else from the exact same lore. But would it be as stylish or shameful as seeing the enemy shoot into their own face, like that one time I experimented with water guns? I don't think so. Next up we have the Transmutation of Lead. Now this is a very reactive spell, and while it may not always be useful, when you get a good cast it can quite literally save your bacon. So picture this, enemies are advancing on you and they're armed to the teeth with melee damage. Tons of damage, high attack, and your poor little front lines are quaking in their boots. Well, with a single cast of this you can reduce the base weapon damage and attack of all units in the considerable radius to save your units from taking quite so much damage. Now yeah, it's base weapon damage, so armor piercing isn't getting touched, so the actually threatening damage is still there, should the reduced attack not kneecap them enough. That being said, 24 melee attacks should be a fairly significant amount of pretty much any unit's attack stats, so the damage output would be much lower even without the damage reduction anyway. The melee stats is for sure the real star here. So if you come across some savage orc biggins with a crapload of base weapon damage and 40 attack, they're going to be essentially swinging some bendy sticks at you. If it's some black orcs, still going to be big scary axes, but hey, they'll miss a lot more often, so not bad. The Overcast is just more base weapon damage reduction, so I honestly wouldn't bother, but hey, if you find a threatening target and it's all base weapon damage and your units have no armor, then you go right ahead. Next we have Dark Subjugation. Now we get into the bread and butter of this list, and the spells are going to start to blend into each other a little bit, but right off the bat we have a great cast. Now yes, it's only a single unit, but 6 Winds of Magic and can plummet a unit's melee defense and take a chunk of their leadership, taking potentially tanky and resolute targets to being fairly vulnerable and not entirely sure if they should be there. Sign me up. Now is it going to do the damage for you? Obviously not, these are hexes you dummy, but what it will do is make enemies far easier to take out provided you send the right units against them. If your front lines are a load of laborers, then of course this is pretty useless. But if we're talking Chad Great Weapons Infernal Guard, then you're cooking with gas. 24 melee defense is a big hit, even if you're talking about Iron Breakers, and I'm not going to go into specifics of how defense works for a couple of reasons, one being that I can't really remember, but the bottom line is your hits are going to go through far more often and those front lines are going to rack up a ton of kills. All the Overcast gets you is double duration, so if it is Iron Breakers that you're against, maybe consider this. 10 Winds of Magic is a small price to pay to remove the immovable object. Next up we have the Enfeebling Foe, another great single target spell here, but the effects are oh so good, especially for that low cost. Gone is the leadership from the lore of Hashut, and instead we have melee defense and melee attack. So not only will enemies be taking way more hits, they'll also be landing way less too. No damage going out and tons coming in spells disaster for whatever you end up facing at SummerSlam. Let's say you're going against those Infernal Guard with great weapons we just talked about. Normally they're a tough target with a crapload of damage too, but with this they have sub 10 attack and barely 20 defense. Send some high armor piercing and melee attack troops at them, maybe buffed by Occam's Mind Razor, and they're not going to know what hit them. Again, the Overcast increases the duration, so if you have a real tough nut to bust, then give it a try, otherwise the baseline is plenty for most things. Coming in 6th, we have the Net of Amintok, taking a break from the melee changes and on something a little bit more basic, but no less powerful. Not sure how I'm going to drag out talking about this one for ad revenue, since it really does do what it says on the tin. Pick a single enemy unit and stop them from moving for 20 seconds. If you're wondering why that's so strong, allow me to introduce you to ranged units. A single target stuck out of melee combat with your own troops is just about the easiest target you could hope for, and even with basic ranged troops, you'll be able to rack up some serious damage. Combine that with high power ranged troops and all of a sudden whatever your target is getting an all expenses paid trip to heck. Nothing more to it than that, just make sure you target something that you can hit with your ranged troops and make sure that they focus fire to get your money's worth. The Overcast simply extends this to hit all enemy units in a 35 meter area of effect, which is pretty rad, but has one slight downside, if you can even call it that. If you stop 3 units, then you need to decide where to aim your ranged troops. 1 unit is easy, since you can just do a big old select all and right click, but stopping 3 means you're going to have to choose which units are firing at what, and either have a long pause in your battle while you do, or some wasted spell time. It's doable, but with a smidgen more work than the base cast if you just want to pop one off real quick. Still, both great spells for any faction with good ranged. Coming in 5th, we have Soul Blight. Well, what do you know, a spell from one of the worst laws of magic turning up in a top 10. Who'd have thought? This is using the same principles I loved about the enfeebling foe with a slight twist. Instead of targeting the melee attack and defense, we're going a step further and reducing both base and armor piercing damage, as well as armor. The 30 armor is great and all, but the percentage based damage reductions are where it's at. As with anything percentage based, the higher the target unit's damage is, the more value you're going to get out of this. So find the most damaging units you can on the enemy side and drop this on them to ruin their day. Their damage output will be hamstrung, and as a nice cherry on top, any armor they have will be heavily reduced, making them far easier to take out or simply keep in melee. The area hitting multiple units makes it even better, and the cost of only 8 winds of magic is crazy low. The overcast doubling the duration is nice for keeping enemies back even longer. The price is a little bit less attractive at this stage, since with that many winds you could take out most of the unit depending on what other laws and spells you have available, but if you have them to spare and you need to reduce damage, then go for it. It is a little more of a defensive spell with the damage reduction, but still if you need to keep enemies back by reducing their damage, it's a great choice. On first look this is just Soul Blight but worse, but once you dig a little deeper you'll see this is a better spell as far as value is concerned. Yes, it's just armor reduction, but it's in an area and it's for a whole 50 seconds for such a low cost. With that you can take tough units down a few pegs and bring them to being killable, and over 50 seconds you have plenty of time to deal a ton of damage, if not take them out entirely. The overcast doubles the armor reduction for the same duration and area, all for only 10 winds of magic. This makes it into a must pick if you're running a plague focused Skaven army, as 60 less armor is the difference between plague monks doing nothing and slaughtering whatever they can find in front of them. For basically any army, this is a great pickup, as such drastic armor reduction is going to make enemy units incredibly vulnerable to all damage you throw their way, and result in big burst damage across the board, leading to plummeting leadership, leading to chain routing, leading to dubs. It's a simple spell, but some things can be powerful because of their simplicity, so do not sleep on this spell as it really is one of the greats. Coming in third we have Uskif's Incantation of Desiccation. Upon first look this might seem to be the enfeebling foe in an area for 15 winds of magic, but it's not. It also has double the duration right out the box. I can't really say too much about it since I've already gone over how good these effects are on one unit, so having them on multiple for this long is even better. You do have to make sure that you're working with damaging front lines, so some Tomb Guard with a few levels under their belt is the way to go, with a few monsters for good measure. Of course, target the best enemy front lines you can, and if you find some lords or heroes in that radius, then go for it since there is no limit to how many units you can fit in a single cast. Nothing else really to say. Great effects, make sure you capitalise on them when you cast, and you can't go wrong. The overcast further reduces melee attack, and I probably wouldn't bother unless you have a really high attack enemy you're up against. 20 plus wins is a lot to spend to not really gain that much more value than the base spell, but hey, that base spell is really good, so it's making the list all the same. In second place we have Glean Magic. Now this is a great spell because of context. Not only are you taking winds of magic away from enemy casters, reducing their ability to assist their own troops, debuff and attack your own. Not only are you granting yourself more winds of magic both in reserve and your casting pool, but you're also playing as someone who has access to Siege, which means access to all kinds of destructive spells, even if you only have that one law and no others. Obviously it's only going to target a single unit, that being the caster, but casters can be some of the most impactful units in the game, so reducing their ability to cast can be pretty crippling, especially if they can't also fight in melee or otherwise contribute to the battle. Now the extra wins you get, according to my maths, actually ends up being a net loss, since 0.1 reserves a second for 23 seconds is only 2.3 wins, but if you're playing Siege right, your reserves should go deep anyway, so that power recharge will really come in clutch and get your casting pool back up to full in no time. The overcast costs 12 and increases the duration to 46 seconds, so still only 4.6 wins according to my calculations, but again, the recharge and denial is the hero here, so you're going to be able to tear the battlefield apart with your own magic, whilst the enemy caster struggles to get a rabbit out of the hat the entire time. And in first place we have a spell that I've should and expect to see here from a lore I never expected, but you know what, I think it deserves it. Phantasmagoria. So we have the overcast version of Amintok, freezing enemies in place inside a radius, add on a leadership reduction so they're much more prone to retreating, and finally toss in the Slanesh roster and what they can do to units stuck in place with their disgusting charging ability, and you can pretty much guarantee you're going to crack all but the toughest units with a single casted charge. Now yes, I'm aware this requires even more organisation and nuance than net since Slanesh is hardly flush with missile units, but if you use everything right, this is an absolutely devastating spell. I mean, your casters can either be on cavern chariots themselves or giant speedy demons, so catching enemy units out is almost too easy once you get the hang of micro. Just drop it on a group of pretty much anything, melee, ranged, you name it, get all your units charging and watch as they break in moments. The overcast is a cool 22 wins for 22 seconds of duration, so pretty costly and pretty unnecessary if you can manage the micro well, but if you need more time to get everything in position, it's still well worth it if you're going to take out some core units of an enemy army. Slanesh is all about using momentum for yourself to plow through enemies in every way imaginable, and this lets you do just that with a lot less hassle. But if you're instead looking for ways to buff yourself instead of debuff your enemies, then why not check out today's sponsor, Skillshare. If you haven't heard, Skillshare is the online platform where you can find hundreds of courses to learn new skills, jumpstart your creative career, or simply improve your existing workflow. In my job as a gigantic nerd on the internet, I'm always looking for ways to improve my work, whether that's in the preparation, production, or reflection part of the process, and Skillshare has me covered. This month, I've gone back to my boy Ali Abdal for more productivity tips, and this time it's all about organizing your workflow to maximize productivity. The course tells you how to split your process into 3 sections: the pilot, the plane, and the engineer, and how you should split your time between the 3 for not just maximum productivity, but also efficiency to make sure you're getting the most value possible out of your time. And of course, there's a few tips on how to maintain motivation and enjoy the work that you're doing, rather than see it as an unclimbable mountain that you're forced to overcome. But if you're looking to get into photography, graphic design, music, cooking, business, marketing, and more, Skillshare has the courses for you. If that sounds interesting to you, if you're looking to learn any one of the dozens of skills that Skillshare offers courses for, then check out the link in the description where you can get 1 month of premium Skillshare totally free. Massive thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and the channel, and now, onto the outro. And that's my list. Did I miss a spell that you think should have made it in? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want to know what the best damage spells are in Warhammer 3, then check out this video here to see the top 10.